I spent the New Year's holiday in Las Vegas with two of my dearest friends. My friends flew out in the morning, and I had reserved tickets to fly out in the evening. I had hours to kill, so I decided to spend the afternoon in the University of Nevada's Extension Garden. So I wanted to take you guys along with me because although my own climate in downtown Atlanta, zone 7, zone 8-ish, it's a little different, but we are all beginning to deal with things like heat and longer periods of drought. And so I thought there must be something I could learn here about plant varieties that survive in the heat and in the drought and how to deal with limited rainfall. This garden only gets 4 inches of rainfall a year. The gardens overall span about 7 acres. This part of the garden is the demonstration and test garden. It's a little over 3 acres. Overall, the University in Nevada has planted over 4,500 different plants. If you're ever in the area, I think it's worth a visit. Here are some of the things that go on the garden, and it's not very far from the Strip, so you should definitely stop by. All right, well, I have spotted the map, and so it looks like the garden walkway, the cork walkway surrounds the garden. So we'll take that walkway through, and I will point out the different areas as we go. It's definitely a sweet and serene place, although you can always hear the thrum of the highway just over the hill. And being about a mile away from the airport, we're going to overhear some of the planes taking off and landing. Regardless of the sounds of industry and travel, this has been a serene and peaceful visit for me. After not too long, I almost didn't even hear the highway anymore. This is a botanic garden. And as this is a botanic garden, all of the plants that you see here are collected and curated for testing, for studying, in order to better understand the xeric conditions of Nevada. One great thing about this garden is there is tons of color and interest. Although it is January 2nd, lavender is still in bloom. The Youth Garden is a community project where students from local schools in Clark County can come and learn not only about gardening, but in this garden, students are learning career development tools as well. So the Youth Horticultural Education Program uses what is called a 4-corner approach. The 4 corners include knowledge development, career readiness, professional development, and basic garden support. One thing I really love about this area is the design of the raised beds. So this circular fashion makes it really easy for anyone who is working with children to keep an eye on children and for students to work together. This space is probably not being used right now as it is holiday season and children aren't in schools, so we'll just leave this area and check out another. The youth garden is located near the mini orchard, and so on my way there, I noticed this cousin it creature that I just love, and I'm gonna have to do a little bit more research to find out if this is something that could survive in my climate. But look at this guy. I wonder if they shave him this way or if he grows this way. And then he's got these two little cousins. So this is Smooth Desert Spoon, the little one, who they are just such cutie pies. And then next to him, the big guy, that is a Sapphire Skies beaked yucca. And then this guy, another one of my favorites. This is a palm tree with fruits on it that are bright yellow, and I mean, you can see them from so far away. And I mean, I doubt this is something I can grow in my area, but it is a date palm. So if you are in a similar climate, I would definitely give this one a look. At the mini orchard, which is a resource for the community, not to eat, but to understand what fruits will grow here in this climate. I noticed that there were a lot of figs, pomegranates, and other citrus, and this area is also used to demonstrate proper pruning methods, as well as improper pruning methods. One thing I'm taking away from this area is that figs are incredibly drought tolerant. Now keep in mind that although it grows here, it doesn't necessarily mean that it is completely drought tolerant. Some of the gardens are irrigated. This, however, is not. This grows in the wash, which I'll explain later. I think it's rosemary, and if it is, imagine having a rosemary bush this large. We are approaching what is called the native plant wash area, which I think is one of the coolest things about these gardens. This is an accidental area where the gardeners actually decided not to plant anything and to just watch and see what would grow here. And although they did spread some wildflower seeds, many of the plants that you see here are completely native, completely self-sown, volunteer. They are not labeled, but I will do more research to see what actually did end up being successful here. And right across from the native wash is the vegetable trial bed, and here is where annual and perennial plants are grown, edible plants are grown. And I noticed, that a lot of the same kind of plants that we would expect to see growing at this time of year are growing here. I saw green onion, I saw kale, a few other leafy greens, and as you can see, they are undercover, which was a surprise to me because the climate is so mild here, but they still do require some protection through the winter months. So here you can see there is a bed of green onions that is looking almost ready to eat. According to the Extension Office, it is a lot easier in Nevada to grow vegetables in raised beds. So you'll see that many of the vegetables grown here are grown in raised beds to deal with issues like high levels of salt in the soil, the highly alkaline soil, the high pH, and the low levels of organic matter in the soil, which of course presents a challenge, but the joy of gardening is in finding those little hacks and carrying on, because gardening is life, and life always prevails. Look at this native wash, look how abundant it is. And just to juxtapose the resilient plants on the right and the plants that need a little bit more coddling on the left, and everything is growing. And we need gardens to survive, to eat, and so it is always good to know that there is a way for those plants that need a little more help to catch up. If you're from the area and you recognize any of these plants, please let me know. I mean, these plants are gorgeous. The extension office does demonstrate composting and mulching here. And you guys should definitely reach out to your extension office because there is so much to learn specific to growing in your own area. Well, here we are in the rose garden. The rose garden is surprisingly awake and alive at this time of year. I noticed quite a few of what we would call shrub roses or knockout roses. And I think that they get a bad rap because they're not, the blousy, beautiful garden roses from, like your grandma's garden, but they're so resilient. I mean, I do know that this area is being irrigated, so they're not surviving entirely off of the 4 inches of rain that I mentioned that they get in this climate. But I did notice a few tricks around the garden, like buried pots, which I will point out when we see those. And this is one of my favorites, the Rosa Mango Tango. It is almost yellow, but there are these hints of pink and peach in the flower. And again, it is January 2nd, and they are flowering right now. And I know I can't expect that out of my own climate, but if you live in a similar climate, you can see here where they've buried pots. And I bet that helps to keep some of the water around the roots. So that's something that you can also try if you live in a drier area and you are looking for ways to irrigate on a budget. Shout out to daffodils. Daffodils are sprouting already at this time of year, and they're going to look lovely under this white rose. So in this moment, I've decided to just take a moment to sit down and take this whole thing in. This garden, in the dead of winter, in the desert, is really a little bit of a miracle. There are these mailboxes all over the garden, and I'm finally discovering what they are here for. So there's a little bit of plant information in this one, and I welcome you to pause and zoom in. There's information about pruning, about common insects, and feeding and fertilizing, so as well as other bits and bobs, as the English call them. And we all need a place to store our bits and bobs in the garden, so this is a great idea. These are 2 roses that I would love to add to my own garden, especially this pinky rose here growing alongside this knockout rose. In the sun, you can see there are notes of blue and purple in this bloom. And it is quite a large bloom, so it's called Rosa Blue Girl. And again, don't discount the shrub rose. I mean, of all of the roses in the garden, it is the only one still covered in blooms. And if you're growing in a climate like this one, I definitely suggest it, even as a backdrop, even as a foundation for other more unique plants. I couldn't identify this plant, but again, if you're in the area and you recognize it, please leave a comment. On my way out of the rose garden, I'm reminded about the importance of setting out water for wildlife, which is something I will do as soon as I get home. right across from the rose garden is the meditation garden, or what some of us would call a Zen garden. And it is beautifully kept up in these lovely raked concentric circles that I decided to take a little walk around. And let me tell you, just focusing on this little path, which I'm not entirely sure is meant to be walked on, really cleared my mind. And so I decided to take a seat and to practice a little meditation. And as I sit here and do my best to clear my mind, all of a sudden, all of the sounds just meld into one constant din. And I wasn't alone. My friend the hummingbird had joined me. So this is pretty cool. The University of Nevada has set up these as landscape demonstrations. And so they give you an idea of what it might look like to apply some of the principles that they are demonstrating in the garden, what xeric landscaping might look like. And, you know, what I like about this demonstration is that it demonstrates that xeric landscaping is not all rock and sand and cacti. Although there are some cacti here, there are also agave and shrubs and foliage plants, palms, and many of the same plants that we saw growing in the larger gardens. There are even fruit plants, edible plants growing in these landscapes. I just love the look of this large agave plant specimen surrounded by the barrel cacti. This was my favorite, so I decided to see if I could get a word with the gardener. Unfortunately, no one was home, but I was able to get a peek. And it was cool to see how these sheds were also doubling as grow areas. So no one's home. That's okay. Anyway, we'll come by another time. Another standout to me are the clusters of purple cacti everywhere. And I wonder if these are naturally purple or if this is a seasonal color change. I do grow these prickly pear cacti in my parents' garden, and those are usually green. I mean, they're green year long, so I wonder where I can get my hands on some of these purple specimens, or if I could, or if it's something to do with the soil, the ingredients in the soil maybe. Because there are also these green ones, I'm thinking it might have something to do with the soil, but more research to come. Another little pomegranate plant. The iris and bulb bed is located right next to the team development course. The garden managers have left some information about caring for iris here, and since there's more than one copy of the info sheet, I decided to go ahead and take one for myself. And so I'm excited to give 2025 iris growing a little bit more intention and care and see what that will yield. Already, so many of the bulbs are up, so that means that they probably get to have their bulb show earlier here in Nevada than we do in Atlanta. The bulb show usually begins near the end of February with crocus, and then daffodil in March, and tulips and everything else starts to pop up in April. So it's January, and it's looking like they're gonna have a show way earlier than that. What is this? What is this, you guys? I don't know if this is special to Nevada. I think that I might have actually seen this elsewhere, but this is beautiful. Is it forsythia? And also, what is this? Like, the sun is really doing this baby a lot of favors. This garden has introduced me to so many little hacks and plants that I would like to bring into my own garden. And it's also shown me how some of my favorites can grow in such splendor. This is thyme, and it has grown so big, and the wildlife love it. It has introduced me to wild plants I would probably never grow, like this one. And more than that, it has inspired me to visit more gardens. I am so inspired just by walking through this place, and even if I don't actually apply anything that I learned here, it is reinvigorating to be in a space like this. I have one more area to check out, and that is this courtyard area. We should think of this area a little bit differently than we do the gardens that we have just come from. These gardens are totally surrounded by the buildings of the extension offices. And so here in the courtyard, there is a totally different climate. It's a microclimate. It's a bit more humid. And so certain plants are growing here that might not be as happy elsewhere. This area is called the Pomegranate Passage. So you can see that pomegranates hold their fruit even after the leaves have fallen. And this particular pomegranate holds its leaves and fruit. I want this plant. And I just think everyone is so creative. This succulent planter in the trunk of a palm is gorgeous. I love this little potting area, this wooden emblem representing the state of Nevada. This tour is almost finished. We are going to round things out here in this smaller courtyard. I actually called my Uber from this courtyard, and I really didn't want to. I didn't want to leave. I had a great time. I could have stayed forever. I was hungry, and so I had to go. But I enjoyed seeing that gomphrena flowers grow in pots. They retain so much of their color and structure. So that's something that I haven't actually tried yet, but I think that I will soon. I know plant labels and plant names would be really nice right about now. Unfortunately, I don't have that, but I did want to kind of give you a good look at some of the more notable plants that are growing in pots out here on the courtyard. So if you see something that you recognize, let us know in the comments. If you see something that you have never seen in pots before, let us know. Bougainvillea is one of those for me. I haven't tried that. I will now. Pineapple lily looks great in a pot. Another thing to try, several herbs are standardized. And again, if you recognize these herbs, let us know. We'll give it a try. I'm glad that the extension offers something to anyone who doesn't have land, who doesn't have space to apply some of the principles that we saw out in the demonstration garden. So it's really cool to see what is growing in planters here. And I feel like they've created a really inspiring space for gardeners of all types. So before we go, I wanted to give you guys one last look at the courtyard, especially the succulent planters on the tables out here in the courtyard. And suddenly I am just motivated to go home and create my own succulent planters. Unfortunately, that's something that I won't be ready to do until spring because everything in my garden is dead. And so that's why I'm glad that I can come to places like these, especially at this time of the year, and enjoy the color that people have elsewhere. And again, I feel so inspired, and I'm definitely going to be visiting more gardens. I'm going to be sharing what I see and what I experience with you, and I hope that we can all take something away from these videos. The more information I have, the more information I'll share. For some of these, it's just about taking in the beauty and, kind of soaking it in. And so with this last canna lily, that is what I'm going to do until my Uber arrives. So I wish you guys well, and I'll see you in the next one.